This week, Conservative leader Pierre laid out his formula for dealing with a volatile Trump administration. Poilievre condemned what the U.S. president has said about Canada, but said it's not worth detonating our strongest relationship in favor of one with China.
What President Trump says about Canada is wrong. Our trade surplus does not represent exploitation by Canada of the United States of America. He's also wrong to ignore the sacrifices Canada has made for the United States. And let's be clear about another thing. The president's talk of 51st statehood, whether it is a joke or not, is unacceptable. It goes without saying there is zero chance of Canada ever being a part of the United States. Canada and the United States have built probably the greatest partnership any two countries have ever built in the history of the world. That partnership remains profoundly in the interests of both our peoples. We should not declare a permanent rupture with our biggest customer and closest neighbor in favor of a strategic partnership for a new world order with Beijing. Unfortunately, the federal government caused many of these obstacles. Fortunately, it can reverse them. By unblocking resources and unleashing our economy, we can become affordable and autonomous and build the leverage we need, the unbreakable leverage we need to fight for tariff-free access to the United States.
Time now for our party insiders. Fred Delory is a former Conservative campaign manager. Greg McEachern is a former Liberal ministerial advisor. And Anne McGrath is a former director of the New Democratic Party. Welcome, everyone. Fred, I'm going to start with you. Yesterday, we heard Poilievre's strongest words on Trump yet. Why now? What do you think took him so long to get there?
Great question. I've been saying it for 13 months now, I think, that he should be on that battlefield. It's great to see that he is on it, and I think he did a very good job on it. I think to give him some credit here, maybe he assumed when Carney ran an election last campaign that he was going to tackle this problem. He would have tackled it by now, and everything would be solved. Now, maybe that's being a bit too cute, but I think the fact that he's reframed his messaging to fit this is a good move by him. And politically, he's done it in a way that hasn't, it's not like it's, a lot of people are throwing out the word pivot. He's pivoting to something. It's not a pivot. I played basketball for a lot of years. I know what a pivot is. That's a complete other direction. His values and where he is has stayed the same. And what he's proposing here is basically it's the same thing. It's just reframing it in the context of what the fight is and what most Canadians are concerned about. Now, affordability, crime, those are big issues that he's still leading in, though it's getting closer. But he needed to get onto this Trump and tariff thing, and I think he's done that. I think he's done it well. If
not a pivot, he was up until this point walking a fairly careful line for the last 14 months around Trump. Now he's taken this line. Can he maintain it?
Oh, I think so. I think he has to, and that's what's got to come next from this. We have to see him continue to use the line and the messaging and his caucus and his team. And they have to be all rowing in the same direction. And I think it was really solid too when he said that there should be some all-party support and coming together and working on this stuff. It's not been proposed, from my knowledge, for the last year. So there's an opportunity there too to see something come from this that I think could put Canada in a much better spot.
Now, Anne, we know that Poilievre and where he stands is strong among the Conservative base. But did he do what he needed to do to speak to the wider public?
I would say probably not. I thought that, I agree he absolutely had to name Trump, and he had to make it clear that he was opposed and all of that kind of thing. But his speech overall didn't provide a lot of contrast with Carney and the direction that the government is going. So there wasn't very much contrast there in terms of like why not Carney, why me, which is really a basic job that you have to do. And I thought that his proposals were kind of weak sauce. There wasn't much there. And the only one that I would thought had a bit of substance was this idea of a more kind of multi-party approach, where you consult with other, but things like a pre-approval for a pipeline was one of the things he talked about. Well, there already seems to me that MOU with Alberta is a pre-approval for a pipeline. Many of the things that he talked about had no no serious, hefty or weighty content to them. They were like variations on what we've already heard from the Carney government.
Although, how much detail, Greg, could he go into in a speech? I mean, it wasn't a platform outlined specific. So I get what you're saying, but in terms of maybe speaking more in generalities, one area he did seem to try to differentiate on is China. Is that something that you think would be a strength for him going forward? Is that enough?
I think there could have been as much detail in this speech as the leader wanted to put in. Picking up on Anne's point here, this reminded me of a big production movie where the press is all about the actors, the casting, how much the budget is, if it's a sequel, and there's nobody paying attention to the plot. And look, I'll give him credit for doing this. If you compare what he said this week to what he was saying to Jordan Peterson, for example, at the end of 2024, I don't care if you use pivot or not, but it's certainly a change. And as a Canadian, I would like to see all of our leaders as similar on this issue as possible, so that the far-right Republicans don't use that against us. And we've seen that sort of happen with Steve Bannon, Breitbart, Danielle Smith's interview, Jamil Javani's. So I think, it's an epiphany overnight that took 14 months. And it shouldn't have. And look, I'll use another analogy. It's like in real estate, where the presence of something is a negative and the absence is just a neutral. Like a popcorn ceiling, like people are going to go, I'm taking $10,000 off the price. You take it off, nobody's going to walk in and say, well, that's a nice ceiling. But now he is just basically kind of, if it lasts, that's the other question. I agree with what Anne said in terms of the substance, but will this last? I mean, on Monday of this week, Andrew Scheer was, talking about how Mark Carney promised to make a deal by a certain date last summer, and I heard, a conservative person on the panel, a pollster, repeat that. That is not true. There was never that. And so you see this kind of, it's almost, what we used to say about Poilievre a couple of years ago in this panel was he can't help himself. In some ways, the Conservatives can't help themselves, and they want to continue to play to the base of the party that supports Trump.
I didn't realize popcorn ceilings were negative, but I'll mention that to my own house. And you did mention his idea of an all-party CUSMA, sort of all-party CUSMA working group. And I do think we have tape of him talking about that. Pierre Poilievre, in his speech yesterday, said he is willing to work above party lines, so to speak, especially when it comes to that. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
The best way for us to become unbreakable in our negotiations and our discussions with other countries is to work to be united here at home. Cooperation cannot mean silence. Opposition, the official opposition, has a constitutional and patriotic duty to scrutinize the government and to hold it to account. Abandoning this responsibility would not strengthen Canada, it would weaken it. We will work together where we can. We will oppose where we must.
Fred, it's not that we didn't expect him to talk about working more with the government, especially on specific bills. We know there were agreements about that. But in terms of a CUSMA all working group, is he serious about that?
I take him for his word here, and I'm surprised no one else has been raising this for the last year. It's actually something that makes a lot of sense, and I hope the Prime Minister takes him up on it somehow and that they work something out, because we are in the state. We talked about how what policies are working for Carney and what, how similar that Poilievre policies may be. And, the Conservatives often make jokes how Carney's stealing their policies. If politically speaking, as a strategist for the Conservative Party, I would be, as I said a year ago, give them as much rope as possible right now. Help Carney to get this stuff done. And if his stuff doesn't work for Canada in a few years' time, that's when he'll be judged. No one's keeping score right now. The polls are what they are, but there's no election right now. There's not about winning the debate right now. It's about putting something forward. So I think this is a very good and bold approach that Poilievre's doing that could work out very well. Show that you're cooperative, showing that you're willing to work. But you're also the leader of the opposition and do have a duty to oppose. But there's something that could come from this down the road in a year or two. Again, we're Canadians. We all hope Carney succeeds. But if he doesn't, I think Poilievre is making that case that, there will be an opportunity for change then.
Greg, does it make this change of tone, if we want to say it like that? Does it make Poilievre a more formidable opponent for the Liberals?
I don't think so. And look, I really want to be kind because, people have been advising Poilievre to do this, and he has. The question is whether it's a little too late. There's also, some struggles with his caucus. You don't see the message discipline. There was some stuff this week about Antifa that came out on the same day. Not, from an MP, one of his MPs, not particularly helpful. So there's a feeling right now he's very, very weak. And unfortunately, the coverage for him is all around, whether it's about what he's saying about Trump or not, it's about whether or not his leadership is strong or not. And in Canadian politics, usually when those stories start, it's very rare that somebody this far along that's having these difficulties has a comeback. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's unusual.
Anne?
Yeah, I think it's clear that his primary imperative right now is to prevent an election, because it would go very badly at the moment for him. And so he needs to make sure that there is no election. And that's what that is, and I think that things that Greg just mentioned are really important in that there appears to be a kind of unusual and surprising lack of discipline in the caucus. He's lost some caucus members. The ones that are still there seem to feel very free to say whatever comes into their head at any particular moment. And so there's not a clear kind of driving force beyond, as I said, his actual desire, need, requirement to make sure that there is no election right now, because he needs to get control of his caucus back for sure, and he needs to find a way to oppose what the Trump administration is doing, but also to provide some proposals that will be in line with that, but also not just almost like variations of a theme on what Mark Carney has got out there.
And Fred, Pierre Poilievre's headed out on his first foreign trip next week to the UK and to Germany. What do we make of that? What message is he trying to send on that?
Again, I think he's reframing the whole issue set where it's about getting our products to market and comparing it to the Trump and tariff issue. So getting out there and going to these countries and pushing for this type of pro-Canadian message, I think, is a very smart political thing to do as well. I don't know who he's meeting with. I don't know where he's going exactly. So I'd be very curious to see how that does roll out and if it does succeed. Or, sometimes international trips are risky. And you're a leader of the opposition. You don't have the benefit of the government support behind you when you're doing that. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out, who he's talking to, and what exactly his message is to those countries.